wants to be serious about building community, and I think that it always is serious about that. One of the more unexplored areas by the church at large is creative practice, is making art, is sitting down together and trying to build something together that can make us see the world in a renewed way. And the reason poetry is the vehicle here, or is a really important vehicle, is that poetry's contributions to Christianity are self-evident. Most of the Bible's written in poetry. And if it's written in prose, that prose is extremely poetic. Poets have been, in the English tradition, have been great contributors to religious life and how we see religious life and how we envision the things that are more esoterically written about in the Bible. But even beyond that, what we can do with words is different than what we can do with paint or music, right? If you're in church and you're singing, that's in no way a bad worship experience at all. It can be very, very, very enlivening and enlightening and luminous and awakening. But it can also be very passive. You're following along with someone else who's made art, right? You're not making it yourself necessarily. But you can. If you just sat down with someone, for a couple of hours, you could learn to write a poem. Would it be the most amazing poem ever? Probably not. But it would be yours, and it would be something you made. And there would be an authenticity to it that you couldn't get just from being a part of a worship service, I think. Or maybe there's a better way of saying it is it's a different experience. Not necessarily better or worse, but just different. Now, you could sit down with a painter, and if you're not inclined to painting, you can sit with them for weeks and weeks and weeks and probably not get much better at painting, right? But you're already inclined to language. You already use it every day. You write, you read, you think in words. And if you can be taught how to use those words to make a picture, to capture a feeling, it's not that big of a jump to get there. You're already inclined to it. For example, like yesterday I was doing some work with a group who would consider themselves, generally speaking, creative, and we're at our church, and we're sitting, and we're talking, and there's a little exercise in the book where a list of items that are found in a toolbox is given. And then as the writing exercise, your assignment is to, your project for that day. Project's a better word, right? Assignments you get graded on. Projects are fun. For your project for that day, you are to find the opposite of that word, that object. So if you say hammer, I think of the opposite of the hammer, but it's got to be found in a kitchen. So it can be an appliance, it can be an ingredient, it can be a tool in a kitchen, but it's got to be found in a kitchen. So the things that people were coming up with were fascinating, right? Because that kind of thinking doesn't encourage us to think about hammers the way we normally think about them. It encourages us to think about how hammers are used and what hammers can mean, right? What's under the hammer, right? The hammer is something that we use often to destroy something or to hang something, right? I mean, it's you're never using a hammer to do something lightly, right? You're always kind of doing this with it. So what might be the opposite of that? What might be a tool that does the exact opposite of that? Someone said an egg separator that separates the yolk from the white. It's weird. It's a weird way of thinking. And that's I totally acknowledge that. We don't think like that on a daily basis, and we probably shouldn't. We would be pretty messed up. But what that does do is it teaches us and shows us how we think, which is a pretty powerful tool. Because if you know how you think, you know what you're going to be afraid of. You know what you're going to be excited about. You know how you work, right? Which ultimately can lead to you learning how to love others, right? You can't understand other people if you can't understand yourself. It's impossible. So the more you understand yourself, the more you're able to understand others. And if you can teach yourself a way into that little mind of yours, then that's a pretty powerful tool, and writing can do that. Well, the book, 28 Days, the book is 28 Days of Devotional Meditations and Writing Exercises. It's designed to be a bridge between the creative class in the church and the non-creative class in the church. So people who are already oriented toward creativity can get something out of it, no doubt. But more importantly, I think, it can teach people who consider themselves to be acreative how to do little things that can encourage creativity and encourage interacting with the imagination. So I would say it's a great little resource for anyone who's stuck in their thinking, for anyone who has a sense that there's another way to see the world that they can't quite get to. Or it would be a really great resource for someone who's just looking to try something different than the average devotional book. Because you have some scripture that connects to this meditation that then bleeds into an exercise. And there's 28 days of that, so it goes in 7-day pieces, chunks. And each 7 days is rolling you toward writing a poem and doing it in a pretty sneaky way so that you don't actually know you're doing it. I like to think that this might be the first time that a lot of people write a poem since they were children or since they started to hate it in high school. That this might be a book that's open-handed enough and welcoming enough that it invites people to sketch in it and write in it and crack the spine and really dig into it like it's a journal, and to capture that little life that you have, and that little life that's yours, that we so often neglect to remember is ours, and that we should be proud of it. That the difference to be made isn't on a huge scale, but on a small one, you know. So that's who I would say the book is for. There's no age limit necessarily. I mean, obviously you have to be literate and kind of ready to do a little writing work, but it'd be a great resource for high school students. It'd be a great resource for colleges, especially creative writing classrooms, small groups at churches. It would be a great thing to do on a Sunday morning instead of the normal kind of devotional experience or discussion type of class that most people go to. doing a writing workshop instead, coming together and sharing what you've written, coming together and trying to create something new in the same room all together. All that stuff's in there. It teaches you how to do a workshop. It teaches you how to do all things you're going to need for writing. And it does so in a pretty, it does so in a way that doesn't cause anyone pain. like that head banging up against the wall kind of pain that people often feel when they've been forced to write something. So.